You've introduced legislation with two other Republicans called the Stop Covid-19 Act, and it takes direct aim at the Communist Party of China. What would it do?
What we would do with the Stop COVID Act is to empower American citizens who have been adversely impacted by COVID-19, whether they lost lives or livelihood, to be able to sue the Chinese Communist Party in U.S. court. There is a law, the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, and we would place COVID-19 as a biological agent in that act so that people would have a form of recourse, a way to seek compensation for the damages done. And Kevin, this has been used before by the 9/11 families. It was used by families impacted by the Beirut bombings.
And so in order to classify it as a biological type of, essentially to classify it biologically though, would you need more intelligence? Would you need more investigations into precisely what Beijing knew, when they knew it, and whatnot? And how do you have that investigation when China has denied any malicious intent behind this and also has refused to allow international investigators into China to investigate?
Yes, you're correct that China has refused to allow those scientists from the WHO and the CDC into the Wuhan lab of virology. That's exactly right. What we do know is that China has lied. They hid information. They knew for weeks that they had an outbreak and then a pandemic. Chairman Xi has said that he knew for several days, and they allowed people to fly around the world from Wuhan, but they wouldn't let them go to other parts of China. These are all components that are known. And because of that, we know that they were fully aware of the infectious nature of this virus. And because of this, we can use this legislation to allow U.S. citizens to seek damages.
Do you think this is something that President Trump would get behind?
You know, we have had a very positive response to this. As I said, we have used this before. You've seen it with 9/11. You've seen it with Beirut. We also have a group out of Israel that has used foreign sovereign immunity. There are different components. There are ways to do this. The president has spoken out several times about the need to hold China accountable and that China needs to pay for this. The other thing I would highlight is other countries, whether it is Italy or France or Spain, they are considering ways that they can seek some form of compensation or recourse for this. Now, you know, looking at the ability to hold China accountable through a legal or judicial proceeding, that is one thing. Of course, Senator Cotton also has a very similar piece of legislation to mine. You also have the discussion around having China waive the right to payment on the U.S. debt that they hold. They hold over $1 trillion in debt. There are others that are looking at other ways to hold them to account. And then several of us have bills that are focusing on a way forward, like my SAMC legislation that would bring pharmaceutical manufacturing back to the U.S., would incentivize that.
Well, others
are looking
I got two more questions for you. I got two more questions for you, and I want to get to both of them because we're pressed for time. But on the issue of Big Pharma, for example, what is the appetite in Congress to actually get that bill that you've introduced passed to make some of the drugs manufactured internationally or components of the drugs manufactured internationally more domestic and potentially have jobs in the U.S. as opposed to overseas?
Yes. Yes, my legislation is joined by Senator Menendez as the lead Democrat co-sponsor. And we feel as we look forward to other pieces of legislation moving, this is something you will see, moving that manufacturing not only of pharmaceuticals but of other essential components of our supply chain back to the U.S. This is something Democrats and Republicans favor. And some of my colleagues are looking at telecommunications or other components of healthcare like PPE or the auto industry or electronics. There are so many things that components that are of a critical and necessary nature are made only in China, and beginning to incentivize some of that back. And my legislation in pharmaceutical manufacturing even has a component for $100 million in grants for universities, institutions of higher learning that want to partner with a pharmaceutical company to look for these advanced manufacturing concepts and platforms that would enable us to more quickly respond to pharmaceutical production that is necessary.
And Senator, in the 30 seconds that we have left, do you think that any of these policies that you've described in the bipartisan ones could get passed before Election Day of this year?
I do, because there is interest in bringing manufacturing back to America. Making America manufacture again is something that we hear. And I will tell you, a lot of the Rust Belt states are very interested in this because they're saying this may be a way to bring manufacturing of some active pharmaceutical ingredient into their community and provide jobs that have been lost.